Welcome to 2 Hours No Traffic, a Sideline Sports podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Spen Harris. He's Philly Brandon. And who would have thought it? Our teams are about to meet up in the playoffs for the second time in 5 years? Was it? I'm trying to think. Was it the
6
it was
years?
The year,
I was a
6 years.
I was a freshman in college when it happened the first time.
Are you sure? Because it was the year before KD and Kyrie got here, and that was 5 years ago. No.
I'm trying to. No, I thought it was.
Wasn't it 2018?
Yeah, maybe it was 5.
Well, listen, that series, we came into Philadelphia with a roster led by D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen.
You're right. No, you're right. It was 5.
I am right.
Because that was the Ben Simmons,
Jared Dudley. Yup.
Yeah.
We came in there. We had a nice season. We were feeling good about our chances, and the Sixers spanked our heinies. And was it 5 games?
Yeah, that was really the coming out party of the Sixers being an actual competitive team. I mean, that was our first real solid playoff test.
I mean, you guys breezed through us, right? Like Dudley and Ben Simmons had that little tiff. You had Embiid with the hard foul on Jared Allen that sparked the big brawl. But you guys handled us like we were a JV team, and you guys were like a D1 college team. A lot of people, Brandon, and we'll get into your thoughts in a little bit, but a lot of people are thinking that this matchup is very similar to that matchup. Spencer Dinwiddie, all of a sudden back. Joe Harris, 2 guys who are on that team. They're playing in this series. A lot of new faces. Obviously, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton. I don't think Claxton was there in that first series. I don't believe he was. If he was, he didn't play. Yeah. So a lot of new faces. I think the only 2 guys that probably remember that series are Dinwiddie and Harris. But do you think that this team is more of a threat than that team in 2018 was, or less of a threat, or are they the equivalent?
I'm trying to think back to that. Honestly, I think it's the equivalent because the team's built very similarly. I mean, obviously, Dinwiddie was there both times. He hasn't evolved much as a player since then. He's still the same guy. Difference being, that year, I'm not saying they're equal caliber players, but that year, the tear that D'Lo was on, he was as much of a scoring threat then as Mikal Bridges is for you now. They're not the same guy. Mikal Bridges, I think, is a far superior player, but accounting for the heater that D'Lo was on at the moment, they could both give you guys buckets.
I agree with that. Okay, that's a fair assessment. I wanted to kind of go through that. I think it's a unique history. And then you look to this season.
Nets might be less scrappy this time around. That Nets team, even though, that series only went 5, that was a bloodbath for 5 games, and it ended up being an issue for the Sixers later on. This Nets team, although I think the vibes are really good, I think there's this belief, the ragtag group of guys, they don't have the same edge that Nets team had.
So as far as the scrappiness, I totally get that. I think what this team has, and this is the one thing that should scare you if you're a Sixers fan, this team has a litany of shooters. A lot of 3-point guys on the Brooklyn Nets, from Joe Harris to Royce O'Neal to Dorian Finney-Smith to Cam Johnson. Mikal Bridges can shoot the tray ball pretty good. You have Seth Curry. Yuta Watanabe coming off the bench. Cam Thomas can hit the occasional 3. Edmund Sumner. All these guys have the ability to get hot from beyond the arc. But that's a big if. So I'm going to shut up for a little bit because I have some real feelings on this series. I want you to sort of get into what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and we can kind of go from there, and we can also cover some storylines because the majority of this pod, let's face it, it's going to be Brooklyn Nets. It's going to be Philadelphia 76ers basketball talk.
Yeah, for the next 2 weeks at least, that's all that needs to be talked about. I think it's going to be eerily similar to that 2018 team. And I don't remember that series quite the same way. Of course, when you win, you don't remember things the same. I remember the Nets being a serious pain in the ass during that series. And yes, the Sixers made relatively quick work with a 5-gamer. I think this will also be a 5-gamer. But I don't think any one of the games is going to be where you look like one of these teams doesn't belong. I think it's going to be a series of between 7 to 12-point victories for the Sixers in the games that they do win. I think Mikal Bridges is going to get his. I don't worry as much about Spencer Dinwiddie. I think D'Anthony Melton's a superior defender who can take away. I mean, I like Dinwiddie a lot. He doesn't really have a deep bag of tricks to go to. And I think Melton's going to be able to neutralize a lot of that. Claxton does as good of a job on Embiid as he can. He's undersized for that matchup. It's just a tough draw to ask him to do. I mean, I think Seth's going to give you 20 or so a night. I think it'll be a hard-fought series, but it won't be a long one. I like Maxey against the Nets. You guys aren't phenomenal against him. We've played historically like Boston is. Embiid's going to be Embiid. James Harden is going to find some extra motivation because you've seen it too. He can turn it on and off. When he's motivated, he can dial it back up to the Houston Rockets. James Harden, when he's not, you get second-year Nets James Harden. So I think we're going to get a motivated James Harden. And then anything else is gravy. I think those three guys are enough to beat the Nets. If Toby decides to play well, if Melton decides to play well, that's great. But I think our big three is going to be enough to get past Brooklyn.
Okay. All right. Listen, that's why, we all have opinions. And I think that yours would be in the popular category where most people who are just average basketball fans probably agree with you. Sixers in 5. Talent is superior on the Sixers team. And I get that.
Brooklyn's going to win, do you?
I mean,
genuinely.
You want me to share my opinion on this series?
Yeah, because look, if I was in your shoes, I might push for 7 or something, but I don't think there's a world where Brooklyn wins this first round.
All right, so let's get into it. So I'm a Nets fan. But I'm also realistic. I normally don't pick the Nets in scenarios like this. I'm actually more of a pessimistic fan. I think that they're going to blow it. There's something unique about this team. And do I think that they have a chance to go on a run and win a championship? Hell no. I understand that. Do I think that they have a chance to upset the Sixers in the first round? 100%. In six games. All right.
No way.
And let me tell you why. Talked about motivation, right? This Nets team is being overlooked by everyone. No one's picking them to win this series. Mikal Bridges, their best player. Mikal Bridges should be a Philadelphia 76er. Guy went to Villanova, diehard Sixers fan, wanted to be picked by the organization, was picked by you guys, and then traded on draft night.
By Brett Brown. Who's no longer with the organization.
So Mikal Bridges has
nothing but love for the city of Philadelphia.
But he has a bone to pick with the 76ers organization. Motivated guy right there. Spencer Dinwiddie. There's been a lot of chatter about Dinwiddie these last few days. Him and Kyle Kuzma got into it, over Twitter. Dinwiddie made some comments. Obviously, Kuzma's not a Sixer, but he called out Dinwiddie. And the one thing I like about Dinwiddie's about as real as it gets.
If we're being honest, dude, Din Shitty Island is not bad. That's pretty solid.
I didn't hate it. And then his joke about like how Dinwiddie should get paid in crypto, like I respect that.
Also pretty good.
Those are pretty good. I think Dinwiddie's going to come into the series with a chip on his shoulder. Guy is averaging 9 assists a game since he's been with the Nets. It's a career high. He's playing some of the best basketball I've ever seen him play of his career. And I just love him in this role. He's confident. He's shooting the ball pretty well. He's been he's been the clutch guy for the Nets down the stretch. I think he's got something to prove. I don't think he was happy about Dallas moving him. He did admit he was a little happy not seeing Dallas miss the playoffs. So you got Mikal Bridges and Dinwiddie coming in with something to prove. You have Joe Harris, who I mentioned, played in this series against the Sixers a while ago. He's coming in motivated. This Nets team has
less worried about Joe Harris.
Yeah, he's been shooting the ball pretty well since the All-Star break. This Nets team. Oh, and Nick Claxton. Nobody think that Nick Claxton will perform against Joel Embiid. Here's my thing. Game plan. Joel Embiid's going to average 30 a night. He is. He's going to get his. I don't see us slowing him down. You can throw anything at Joel Embiid. He's going to eat it right up. But if you can slow down the rest of this Sixers lineup, if you can slow down James Harden a little bit, if you can get Tyrese Maxey a little frustrated, if the rest of the team is missing shots and, you have to depend on Embiid to carry you, I think you can find a chink in the 76ers armor. And I also think, like I said earlier, the Nets are a different team when their guys hit shots. Granted, they can get cold very quickly and they can go over and they can look terrible. But as of late, Dorian Finney-Smith been picking it up a little bit these last few weeks before the end of the season. Royce O'Neal has been a warrior for this team. Real Nets fans know what he brings to the table on defense, on offense, playmaking ability. He's kind of like a second or third point guard out there, Royce O'Neal. He's great. Cam Johnson, his Nets tenure got off to a very rocky start. He has been playing very well as of late. So I look at this Nets team and I think, they have the pieces for this upset. The first two games are going to be extremely telling. If the Nets can split in Philadelphia, I think they split back in Brooklyn, and I think they win game 5 in Philadelphia and game 6 in Brooklyn. Nets in 6. That is my pick.
I don't see how that happens. I get you have the right general idea on if you're going to beat Philly, how to do it. And it's you can take James Harden out of the mix and we still win. I mean, you see a lot of our games where, if he has 10, 11 points, but he gets 14, 15 assists, that team still runs like a well-oiled machine. I think the biggest guy that you would need to take out of the equation for Philly is Tyrese Maxey, because he's the real other lethal scoring punch. James is going to get his. You're not going to notice it, though. It's going to be at the foul line. It's going to be opportunistic, a couple step backs. If you can keep Tyrese Maxey from getting red hot for a quarter or two, that's where things get a little tricky. Yeah,
and again, I think I'm more scared of Maxey than I am of Harden. I don't know. Tell me up. Yeah. Okay, I remembered my motivation for Joe Harris and Nick Claxton. It's not the Sixers series from 5 years ago. It's the fact that James Harden looked at this roster a year ago with Nick Claxton and Joe Harris on it, and he said, "Nah, I'm good. Send me to Philly." Brandon. If Nick Claxton and Joe Harris beat James Harden, their former teammate, then why did James Harden ask to be traded to Philadelphia? Do you understand the logic there? That, for me, is motivation enough for this Nets team to come together and say, guys, James Harden hated it here so much. He refused to play. He went to the general manager and said, I want to go to this destination. If we are able to beat him, he will look so silly. He will never recover. He will not be in Philadelphia next year if it's a first-round exit. And your little franchise, the process, it'll be done before you can blink. I wanted to point that out. And by the way, I think those are the only two guys, and Seth Curry is the third guy, who were on this team last year that played with Harden, and Daron Sharp. But I don't think Daron Sharp's going to see the court much. I really think that that's got it. If I'm Jacques Vaughn, I'm going in the locker room and I'm giving that speech.
You can absolutely give that speech. A lot of coaches make stuff up to get people hype. Remember, we covered it on this podcast, and we were both pretty unanimously in agreement, even though, I know it was a bit of a tough time for you watching the beginning of the Nets start to fall apart. But, James Harden left that team among the calamity that was, the KD possibly want now, possibly not. Kyrie, I'll play when I feel like it. At least to my knowledge, in any of his post-Nets interviews, it wasn't, we didn't have enough weapons. It wasn't the supporting cast wasn't there. I don't remember him specifically calling out the talent on that roster. It was the dysfunction and the fact he was asked to carry for months on end when he was supposed to be part of a triumvirate.
Well, that right there, he didn't have to say, oh, I don't have talented teammates. But the fact that he's like, I don't want to carry this bunch kind of implies that your teammates are shitty.
Well, yeah, but you were sold an opportunity to play alongside two superstars who, when you arrived, decided for one reason or another that they'll play when they feel like it.
I'm not saying that the narrative has to make the most sense. I'm saying it's a narrative that I can tell my team. All right, I
But I
want
think
to look. Yeah.
if that's the narrative, like I guess my thing, even like on the motivation side of things, if the Nets' best motivational tactic is a somewhat flimsy narrative that you could hype up and get the guys behind, if you flip that around the other side of the aisle, I mean, the narrative for the Sixers is literally life as you know it. Because if you do lose this first round, everybody but Joel Embiid, and I'm only 90% sure on that, is out. Doc's out, Harden's out. Anybody who's a free agent they're not bringing back. I mean, the team ceases to exist as you know it. So if your motivation is, we can kind of twist this story to be motivational, well, the Sixers can raise you everything we know would change.
I mean, yeah, the pressure is on the Sixers. And I hate that concept of Nick Claxton saying we have nothing to lose. Like, you have a playoff series to lose. Just because you're the underdog doesn't mean you have nothing to lose. Less money if you don't move on to the second round, like lost revenue. All right, so let's stick with the Embiid narrative, right? Because Embiid's a monster. Do you think that the fact that he is probably going to win the MVP award, do you think that hurts him in this playoff run?
In what sense?
In the sense that
the chip not being there?
Yes, exactly.
See, I don't think it has anything to do with that, because I mean we've done this the last 2 years with equally talented Sixer teams, and Embiid's been snubbed, and he still came out in the playoffs and absolutely balled out last year on a torn meniscus. So I never worry about Embiid getting up or down for a moment. I mean, you look at every game he plays, whether it be the Magic, whether it be the Celtics, it doesn't matter who he's playing, he's gonna get 30 and 12, 40 and 10, whatever. I mean, he's just that consistent. And I think for him, the MVP is going to be one check off, but I think the bigger chip for him is the second round. The MVP is such a high bar to clear that if you don't have one in your sixth season, you can get by. I think what's more damning to the Embiid legacy, and he knows it, is another second round exit. So that's the chip more than the MVP is.
Okay, I think that's fair. And by the way, if I have the Nets winning this series, I have them losing in the next round. They're not beating Milwaukee or Boston. I forget. I think
I don't know
Milwaukee.
if we do.
Yeah, you're right. That's the thing about the Sixers team. I think I don't know about maybe not you, but I think Sixers fans and the Sixers think they're better than they are. At the end of the day, you're the third best team in the East.
Yeah. You know, and there's a gap. I think Milwaukee and Boston are on equal footing as far as dangerous in the East. And then I think there's a small gap, but a gap, and then you hit the Sixers. And I think after the Sixers, there's a sizable gap as far as being able to compete at the top of the division. But yeah, no, there's definitely, we're not the class of the East. I mean, Embiid himself said it. He did a great interview. Oh man, I forget who did it. It was on NBA TV. I forget the name. The guy who did it, but they asked him, what is it going to take for you to make a run? And he said, with how good Milwaukee and Boston are, we need to be perfect in order to beat them in a 7-game series. Whereas they need to be good. He said, we need to be absolutely perfect. We have no room for error against either of those teams. So, I mean, inside the locker room, they're aware of what they need to do in order to beat Boston or Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It was a great interview, by the way, too. It was on NBA TV. You can catch it on NBA.com. They posted Hakeem Olajuwon texted into the interview and said, "Hey, glad Joel got the MVP. Really rooting for him in the playoffs." It was supposed to be this heartwarming moment, and they showed Embiid the text on a big screen. And Embiid's immediate reaction was, "Well, that's a lot nicer than the things he said about me last week."
Oh, damn.
He remembers all of his haters, dude. It's a little bit unhealthy, but I like it.
Embiid keeps receipts.
He does. I mean, he's got. That's the other thing. And I'm just gonna real quick. There's an account on Twitter who I particularly can't stand, and I don't usually give him any time of day. But there's an account called Per Sources, who is just the worst NBA account ever. I mean, the discourse is just, he doesn't even try to be objective. And he said Embiid is the least deserving MVP since Nash in 05 and 06. And it's just, the numbers just don't support it. It's absolutely ridiculous. And
I don't think that the Sixers are great, but that's no fault of Joel Embiid. He's been the best player in the league this year, and that's a Nets fan saying that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Jokic has been great. Don't get me wrong. Embiid's been better.
Yeah, and it's a sizable advantage. You can see that in the MVP votes. But it's just the idea that, oh, this used to be such a civil award until, Joel Embiid won. And it's like, no, dude, go back over the last couple of years. Like, it was toxic as hell. It was always injured, choke artist, overrated, never rises to the moment, like all this kinds of stuff. It's like, we just kind of took it. Like, I don't know. Denver fans, in my opinion, are right up there now with the Celtics fans as far as just unbearable.
And that's crazy because they smoke so much pot. You would think they're chilling.
Yeah, they should be relaxed. I don't get it.
What was I gonna say about Embiid and the MVP stuff and Jokic? Oh, I don't remember.
I want to get your thoughts on something real quick. Oh no,
okay.
We'll do Doc, and then I got.
Yeah, I want to do Doc. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. If Doc Rivers loses, is he done in Philadelphia in the first round?
It's tough. I think. Oh, first round for sure. First round. See you later. And I think Sam Cassell would succeed him. He's actually interviewing for the Houston job during the first round, but he won't take it until obviously after the Sixers season's over. But yeah, first round exit, Doc's gone. Second round exit, the fans want him gone. Josh Harris doesn't care enough to get rid of him. He just bought the Commanders, so I mean, the Sixers is really just a cash grab for him. He'll keep Doc. He's more of a casual fan, but I think anything short of an Eastern Conference Finals, the fans have officially turned on Doc.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I'm picking the Nets, because I don't think Doc Rivers is a good coach. I think there are a lot of things he can do to lose this series. What I was going to say before, and I want you to ask me the thing is, like, I love how Steve Nash just always catches strays as a player, right? Like he's a terrible coach and he should get shit for being not a great coach. But like every time an MVP is brought up, it's like, well, he shouldn't have won in 05. Like, it's not his fault that he won the MVP. All right. Like,
I know.
You can't blame him for that.
I know. I don't know. I'm not a Steve Nash hater. I think if you win an MVP, it's deserved because there's too many people to give it to you where it wouldn't be. But I forgot you weren't on last week because you were in a tropical paradise. But I had my buddy Trilly on, and we did a kind of a Philly episode. And Doc did an interview that gave me no confidence in him going into this playoff series, and it is. The question was, Doc, you typically go deeper than most coaches into your bench during the playoffs. Like, you've been known to play 10, 11 deep. Will you shorten their rotation this time around? And the answer to the question was, well, in 08, we would go 10 deep. I mean, we all saw how that turned out. Guys were freshmen up winning the title. So I don't see a reason to shrink the rotation. And at that moment, I was like, we are so screwed if he's still coaching this game as if it's 2008.
Yeah, that didn't work with the Clippers when you had like 9 guys and you played all 9 guys and you lost every year.
He did an interview today and he absolutely eviscerated that Clippers team. He
said they would have been better if people. I saw the tagline. It was like that people just didn't get along on that team.
He said they asked him, that Clippers team, if he regretted not bringing that Clippers team a title, and he said there was no way that Clippers team was ever going to win a title. And then the quote you heard, but yeah, I mean, he knew they weren't going to win it, but you still, like, the fact he's still clinging to, well, if you guys remember, I won a title back in 08. It's like, dude, that was before the 3 had just started becoming like a dominant part of the game, and you had 3 Hall of Famers.
Yeah,
you could argue a 4th. I mean, Rondo's not going to get in, but he'll be talked about. Like that starting lineup was an all NBA starting lineup. Like no shit, you could go 8-10 deep.
Yeah, I mean, my grandma could have been the head coach of that team. And they should have won more than one championship. The fact that they lost to the Magic the next year and then lost to the Lakers that third year was pathetic.
It's actually a failure.
It totally was. Yeah, Doc's, yeah, he deserves so little credit for those championships. Or that one championship.
Head coaches, I would feel more secure if you give me Jacques Vaughn with the roster.
I don't hate that. You were talking a little bit about the rotations. I wanted to hear, because, for people who aren't huge Philadelphia fans, what do you think is the optimal rotation for this team? The starting 5 is what? It's Harden, Maxey, PJ Tucker, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris, correct? That's the starting lineup. Brandon? Oh, Brandon might have froze.
Okay, there goes Spen. So basically what what Spence was trying to get into was, what is. There we go. We're back. All right. I know where you're going with that, so I'll answer the question. Yeah, starting lineup's going to be Maxey, Harden, Tucker, Tobias, and Embiid.
Gotcha.
The only time that could ever change is if you guys went small. Maybe PJ Tucker comes out and you throw Melton in for defense to have him play like a small 3, but I don't see that happening too often. And then off the bench, first guy off the bench, assuming he doesn't start, is going to be Melton. I disagree with it, but probably followed by Niang. If he's hot, I'm okay with it. I think he should have a very short leash. And I would only really play Niang as long as McDaniels is on the court with him. Those two play really well together because McDaniels can shoot the ball enough. He's a little more dynamic than Niang. Niang's kind of a bomber. But McDaniels on the glass has been a big, big revelation. Plus, having him and Melton together on the court for defensive purposes, that creates a lot of steals. Paul Reed's going to be the primary backup for Embiid. And I'm not sure how often you see guys like Daniel House. Maybe if someone gets into foul trouble. And I really do think that they're going to use Jaden Springer as a defensive specialist. I think he might only see 5 or 6 minutes a game, but it's going to be down the stretch on an inbound play. Put him in, pull him out kind of thing. But he'll see minutes for sure.
Interesting. Okay. For the Nets, for Jacques Vaughn, starting 5, it's Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Dorian Finney-Smith. First guy off the bench usually is Royce O'Neal. He's your 6th man. He's been absolutely key for the Nets in the second half. Then it sort of varies. You'll have Seth Curry play a little backup point guard. Seth historically has played really well against you guys. He had a big game earlier this year. You'll see Joe Harris come in, get some minutes. You will most likely – it depends between Edmund Sumner and Cam Thomas. If either of those guys see minutes, I personally prefer Edmund Sumner. But the idea is if you're going to play Seth Curry as the backup 1, you're probably not going to play Sumner too much. And then that 8th, 9th guy, he has not been great since KD and Kyrie Irving were traded, is Yuta Watanabe. Defensively, not that good. Offensively, his 3-point shot fell off, so he hasn't been a huge contributor for the Nets. But if Jacques Vaughn decides to go 8-9 deep, you'll see him get some play. And then at the backup center position, once Nick Claxton gets in foul trouble, he needs a breather. You're going to see some Day'Ron Sharpe. My only issue is Joel Embiid will throw around Day'Ron Sharpe like a rag doll. So that worries me. But yeah, that's going to be the Nets rotation. You're most likely not going to see any Cam Thomas, although every time he plays, he scores about 40 points. You won't see Patty Mills. You won't see David Duke Jr. And you won't see Ben Simmons because he's not active. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah.
What's so crazy to me, and I agree with that. I think that's the way the rotation should go. It's that when you look at the Sixers team of last year, where you had well, it would have been the beginning of last year and the end of the year before. The last 3 years they've been title contending teams. As much fun as the Nets team is going to be this year, they're not a title contender. Seth Curry for the last 3 years of his career has been a starter on a title contending team. It's wild to me that the 6th seed, the sum is greater than the whole or whatever, a ragtag group of Nets. He's now off the bench for that squad. Is it a fit thing? Has he fallen off since his Sixers days, or what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, my problem with Seth Curry and the way that the Nets have used him this year, and maybe I'm in the minority, he's not a point guard. Steph Curry is an undersized 2 that plays great off the ball. But if you have him handling too much, it's just not his game. So the Nets, since the big 2 have been traded, they've kind of tried to utilize him as a backup point guard, which means he's forced to try to create for his teammates, which isn't a strength of his. He's not a great playmaker. He's really a catch and shoot kind of player, and he can create a little bit off the dribble. But the problem becomes if he's not a playmaker, he's a very one-dimensional player with the ball in his hands. And guys they know he's going to shoot, so he has not been great in that backup point guard role, and that's why a lot of Nets fans, including myself, would rather see Edmund Sumner in there, because Sumner gives you a little bit more speed, a little bit more versatility on defense. Sumner's able to get to the basket a little bit more than Seth Curry is. But Sumner's not the shot maker that Seth Curry is, and that's where Seth sort of wins out. Is, look, at the end of the day, his last name is Curry. He's related to Steph. He's the son of Dell. He knows how to play basketball. He's proven in this league that he can shoot with the best of them. I mean, I think
he was a Sixer. He was routinely top 5 in percentage every season he was here.
Right,
and he took volume shots.
Right, he's one of the best 3-point shooters of all time from a percentage standpoint. So it's I understand why he's out there, and I would rather see him out there than not see him out there. But again, like I said in the beginning of this whole rant, he's not a point guard. So when you see him as the backup one trying to make plays for the second unit, I think that's when the Nets offense tends to stall out a little bit.
But I guess the way I'm looking at it, and we'll end it on this because we're a little bit over 30. The Nets are going to need to put up a lot of points because, the Sixers are able to do that. And if you have a guy who can get red hot from three, and, Seth Curry can easily put up 20 points in an NBA basketball game with relatively low difficulty. It would seem to me that it's worthwhile to find a way to kind of weaponize him rather than shoehorn him into something he's not good at.
Here's my thing, Brandon. You just don't have one guy who can get hot from three. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 7 players on this team, not including Yuta Watanabe, because he's been terrible in the second half, that can get hot from three.
But how many of them are truly a better shooter than Steph Curry is?
I mean, Joe Harris would be tied, I would say.
Yeah.
Royce O'Neal has hit some really big shots for this Nets team, some big threes, and he's had it go in the last few weeks. I trust Royce O'Neal's playmaking ability and shot making over Seth Curry's shot making. Dorian Finney-Smith is sort of that wild card. He's been hot and cold, but he has the ability to get hot. Dinwiddie can hit the three on occasion. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are both snipers from three. If Mikal Bridges gets it baseline, walk away because that shot's going in. Cam Johnson he's not shy. He'll put him up and he hits a lot of them. So yeah, as great as Seth Curry is, and maybe none of these guys are the pure shooter that Seth Curry is, when you have 6 or 7 guys that have the ability to get hot from beyond the arc, it's kind of just like a pick your poison type deal. And maybe one night it's Seth, another night it's Royce, another night it's Mikal and Cam. So that part of it sort of makes Seth Curry's minutes expendable because you don't need Seth Curry's 3-point shots to be in the game because you have so many other guys that can shoot the 3-ball.
Yeah, I mean that could definitely be the case. And you watch a lot more Nets basketball than I do. I watch when you guys are on national TV. The only reason I'm, and that's not because he was once a Sixer, because that's been about a year and a half now. I'm picturing in these playoff games, you need guys who have the ability to just go shot for shot with the big guys on the other side. And you don't have a ton of them. And I think from an outside perspective, the 3 that I would feel the most comfortable with if they had to get into a shot-making battle is Bridges because of his shot creation, Dinwiddie because I think he has a couple more tools, and then it's probably Seth after that for me, just as somebody who you don't have to be like, well, he might get hot or he might have a night like this. When he gets going, he has the ability to score in a volume that Royce O'Neal and those guys don't have that same ability.
I get it. The problem with Seth is he doesn't play enough minutes to do that. So, yeah, if he was playing 25, 30 minutes a night, sure, he'll put up 25. He's playing 10 to 15 minutes a night. He's lucky if he scores 8. You know what I'm saying? Like, he can get hot, but he's not going to see the minutes to the point where he can be that third guy. I don't know if I want to say the word unfortunately. That third guy is Cam Johnson, scoring-wise. As far as importance, Nick Claxton, I would say, is the second or third best on the team, but scoring-wise, it's Cam Johnson. So do I think that we can, our big 3 can score with your big 3? Hell no. They can't. That's why you're going to need to play really solid team basketball. I'm trying to think of like a team that I can compare these Nets to. I really can't, but it would be a team that has close to a superstar and then a ton of 3-point shooters. And I can't think of an example.
The team is the Kawhi Spurs.
Yes, but didn't that team have Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and
but they were all mid-30s by then. I mean, that's a team where guys like Boris Diaw made a big difference, and Leandro Barbosa.
Danny Green was on that team.
Yeah, like you had
Leandro Barbosa wasn't on that
Spurs team. Yeah, I got him and Diaw mixed up. But yeah, that was a team of aged out superstars and some young up and coming guys. I'd say talent wise, they're on probably par with the Nets.
You think Mikal Bridges is on the same level as that Kawhi Leonard? I mean, that's high praise.
That addition of Kawhi, yeah, because he wasn't an offensive force yet. His claim to fame that year was giving LeBron headaches.
Yeah, I can see that. It's hard for me to find a team that was so reliant on the 3-point shot, and then you had a guy like Bridges Bridges is great. He's a star. He's not a superstar yet. I just can't. Maybe a Utah team back before Mitchell was that guy. That's kind of what I'm thinking. When they had Ingles
teams.
Yeah, they had like Joe Ingles and Bogdan. It was Bojan Bogdanovic, right? Was it Bogdan or one of the Bogdanovic guys? Bogdan is the one. I'm getting myself confused. I'm gonna have to look this up. But you had a lot of guys on that team that can shoot. Conley was on that team. It's Bojan. Bojan Bogdanovic was the dude that was on the Jazz. Bogdan Bogdanovic is the guy on the Atlanta Hawks. So I don't know. I look, you guys are the favorite. You have more talent than us. I think you're deeper than us. The one thing that we can do is we can shoot the three, and we can be really we can be a pest on defense. And that's the only, we're not going to stop Embiid, but if we can slow down the rest of your team, watch out, City of Philadelphia.
Well, we'll keep an eye out. If you guys get hot, I think it can be a problem, but you're going to have to stay hot for quite a while. But something tells me, we typically do these once a week. Something tells me during the playoffs, we might sneak in maybe a third one.
Listen.
Maybe earlier next week, we'll see how. Just get a temperature check on how things are going, see if I'm pulling my hair out or not.
When it comes to these Brooklyn Nets, there's no limit to how many podcasts I'll do. This is my second in the last day and a half, and I got back from across the country. I'm sorry, across the entire world yesterday. So, we might have to. Once the Nets take a 2-1 lead, we're probably going to have to jump back on.
Or once the Sixers pull away, but we'll see. Check in early next week. We may be back with a special episode just to kind of check in on the series. I'm Philly Brandon. That's Spen Harris. This is 2 Hours, No Traffic. See you next time.
Later.